What's up, guys? Ted Jones World Podcast. We're doing it virtually today. It's been a minute since we've done anything virtually like this, but we have all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, author of You Can Get There From Here, tennis legend Barry Buss. What's up, man? How's everything going?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
Why don't you kind of just preface everything and, even just talking about from the beginning of the book and your life and meeting Patrick McEnroe. Let's get to it, man.
I grew up during the tennis boom of the 1970s, and when nobody knew a whole lot of anything about tennis development or child development or anything like that. I just had a rather tumultuous junior career where I had kind of one of these over-the-top parents at the time who was dedicated to making sure his kids had a little bit more of a life than he did. And so when it came to, he never had these opportunities when he was younger. So when he saw that I had some skill in tennis and stuff, he got all in on my tennis. And so the story kind of took off. I was, kind of grew up in lazy New England, and not a whole lot was happening. And then we moved out to Southern California when I was about 14. And at that time, it was kind of ground zero for American tennis. It was just everybody, Robert Lansdorf and Tracy Austin and all these kind of famous icons from that period were there. And I got thrown into the middle of all this. And lo and behold, right in the middle of it, I got real good and proceeded to go on to Junior Davis Cup and UCLA and setting some records there. But all the while, I had an undiagnosed mental health disorder that was going on, that I dangerously started to self-medicate at around age 14. And that I wasn't properly diagnosed until I was 37. And so that's what my book is about, is that long tumultuous story from my first drink to my last drink, which was March 10th of 2012. And as we just talked about, I just celebrated 11 years of sobriety last month, and really proud, very happy to be here and being able to talk about all this stuff.
Do you think that having such a successful junior career, would people say that being that good at tennis that early, that there's something different about this kid, whether it's something in a positive light or a negative light? Is that something that you'd see?
What it can do is it can mask a lot of things. I think, one of the things I started getting high almost daily when I was 14, but but there was no signs that I was doing it. And I was able to get straight A's in school because, school came easy. I was managing to kind of stay in the middle of the pack tennis wise. I wasn't, number one in the country or anything like that, drawing a lot of attention to myself, but I wasn't falling off either. So it was easy to kind of just keep, no one asked a lot of questions. On many levels, I was excelling, but at the same time, internally, I was struggling mightily, and, I wasn't doing the things, to build to last, more or less, to make this thing go all the way.
When you decided to go to UCLA, you had a half ride, and then you had an offer from Berkeley, I believe, for a full ride.
Right.
What was it? Why was there such a disconnect between you only getting a half ride in tennis and then winning 22 straight matches? Like, that doesn't happen in any sport. You know what I mean?
Let's just put it this way. UCLA was the defending NCAA champions, and they were loaded, and I was the last guy on my recruiting class, and we had Jim Pugh and Willen Borg and a bunch of other guys who were, perennial top 5 in the country guys. So I was low man on the totem pole when I came in. I think we had 12 guys on the team. I was probably 12th when we started, but coach had a real fair system there where, if you won, you moved up. If you lost, you moved down. So I managed to make it through the fall and my challenge matches. And when it came time to set the lineup, he gave me the chance at number 6. And then, I managed to not lose and just stay the course and won my first 22 matches. And before I knew it, I was playing number 1 as a freshman, and couldn't have been more uncomfortable if I had to be.
Yeah, insane, dude. Because that happens. You see it in a basketball and football. But these days, if you're the number 12th guy on the team day one, like, there's no shot in 8 weeks you'd be number 1. Did you really want to go pro before? I guess it was Roy Emerson was the first one to really give you your props, right? Was there like ambitions of going
once
pro?
Coming out of Southern California, you're surrounded by tennis royalty. I mean, playing Anthony Emerson, in the juniors, and I'm watching his father there and having him worrying about me. I was like, oh my God, Roy Emerson is worried about me.
Yeah.
like I really arrived here. And there was numerous other, kind of legacy families in Southern California at the time, the Shays and, all kinds. You can go right down the list. I never, back then, no one really even thought about going pro. We were just kind of doing our junior tennis thing, and it wasn't really Yeah, I mean, I think back on talking with my guys and stuff. We never really, it wasn't really a conversation we had. I was going to college was a big deal, obviously excelling in the juniors and so forth. But once you start getting a little taste of it, I had a few dips in there and I beat some guys who had world rankings and, that were players. And I was like, okay, I can compete at this level. Now, can I train at this level? I knew I could play with these guys, but, could I do the lifestyle, which is, the sacrifice that it takes to be a professional tennis player and the travel and the just enduring all the ups and downs of the life. Did I have the emotional stability and strength to do that? And I found out pretty quickly I did not.
But being on the Junior Davis Cup team, you saw probably what it took, when you had all those juniors on the team next to you who wanted to be pros. Was there something in you being like, I'm better than all these guys? Or were you just kind of not, your mind wasn't really focused on the tennis?
Yeah, so it was kind of a weird dynamic. I never had a coach. I was completely self-taught, which was kind of very rare for back in that time. Now, it's very fortunate to be in California where there's so many guys to practice with. We just crack a can of balls and just get at it. So in a weird kind of convoluted way, I kind of took some weird pride in getting to that level by myself. Everyone else had their teams and their parents and all the support system around them. And I was just kind of winging it. And I'd go play my couple sets and go get high and just do my thing. And at the same time, I was able to hang with these guys. But at the same time, you could tell the great ones were just a little different. They were a little more focused. They were a little more serious about it. And it was always a challenge for me. Like, am I one of these guys? Because they just seemed to take it. They had been great for a long time. I was a late bloomer. And though I could play with these guys and beat them, periodically and stuff. Was I one of them? There was always that.
What was the kind of stuff that those guys were doing off court that you maybe weren't focusing on?
There was this, I think I tell the story in the Junior Davis Cup tryouts where my first day out there, I had to, it was brutal. You have conditioning in the morning and then you do two out of 3 set matches. And then there's another conditioning afterwards. And, after one day of this, I played a couple long 3-setters the first day and I go eat and I can barely walk back to my room. And at the corner of around the building, I hear somebody cracking balls. I'm like, it was dark and the lights were on. I'm like, who is it? It was the guy I played in the morning, and he had another 3-setter. Here he is late at night and he's out there still grinding. I'm like, wait a minute. These guys, do they want it more than me? Is there something off with me? Because I had never seen guys that dedicated to it. So there were levels of commitment to it, the kind of the mini me professionals that marveled me. But there was a lack of imbalance or lack of balance in that life, not that I was some kind of Renaissance man at the time, but I had other interests outside of just playing tennis all the time. And it seemed the guys who were just a little bit more focused and all in on the tennis seemed to be able to see it through a little bit longer than those of us who got, distracted by West LA in the 1980s.
What was the tipping point where you think you were like, all right, I'm super distracted here. I need to get back into UCLA tennis, or what, you were hanging with the wrong crowd in LA?
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of grew up in a real kind of middle class, engineers, child of engineers, very, very kind of simple way of life. But then all of a sudden I started meeting a whole bunch of guys up in West LA and, it's kind of famous film families. And it was just a whole new world to me. And it was, then all of a sudden after my first year at UCLA, I started teaching in one of the Saudi Arabian princes, the Saudi Arabian royalty up at their houses in Beverly Hills. And here I'm 18 years old and I'm in a Rolls Royce and I'm going, it's just crazy. So you see that and it pulls at you a little bit, do I want to hit a couple cross courts, or I want to, get in the rolls and go to Tahoe with the prince, and so you balance those things out. And, without a whole lot of guidance, I was doing this all by myself. I didn't have anybody kind of trying to guide me to like, listen, you got a potential here. That stuff's not going anywhere. If you can just kind of put it aside for a little bit, that will all be there for you when you finish your career. But I just couldn't, in my little grandiosity, I thought maybe I could do it all, that I was different there, but I could party like a rock star because I had been doing it, throughout high school. I got away with it. But then when I got to college and I was no longer impervious to the negative effects of drugs and alcohol, it started to reel me in, and there was just no way to do both.
To jump ahead a little bit, talking about always kind of being on yourself, there were times when you went missing. Did you feel yourself like you were missing? You're focused on if it's finding meth for that day or maybe alcohol. What's the mindset of waking up and?
Yeah, you're not terribly present. Let's just put it that way. You don't, it's almost like being taken over in many ways. Addiction, just your ability to make good quality choices, not just for yourself, but for those who care about you too, whether they're clients or family or loved ones. that just gets slowly eroded, where you're just no longer weighing out the, if I'm going to go do this, there are consequences and people are going to be concerned and left hanging and stuff. You just don't, that's not even entering your mind anymore. If that is entering your mind, you don't do, you don't do those things. So the only way you can continue to live in the addictive style is to be able to block all that part of your life out and not feel what you're doing to others, and particularly yourself. That you're slowly killing yourself with these substances. And if you were actually present and thought about what you were doing with yourself, there'd be a chance you wouldn't do it. But the only way to continue to do that is just to be in complete denial about what you're doing to yourself and others.
Do you think that marijuana was a gateway drug for you?
Yeah. I think once you kind of cross that Rubicon where there's a taboo. I think when you're younger, there's do's and don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that. And then,
well, especially growing up, kind of when you were growing up and coaches telling you that this is an issue. Do you have a problem? When if you were drinking wine when you're 21 years old after you win a match at UCLA, it might not be considered a problem.
Right. So I mean, even today, the taboo on drugs and illegal drugs, it's always in your mindset that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And so that part. But once you cross that line and you realize, okay, my life didn't fall apart. Oh, this is actually quite enjoyable. You wouldn't do it if it wasn't enjoyable. And I really like the way this made me feel. Particularly myself having an undiagnosed mental health condition, this became my self-medication.
Was your self-medication? Sorry, don't mean to interrupt. Was your self-medication, do you think, initially tennis, escaping, teaching something to yourself, and you were so proud that you were able to get to such a high level just by yourself? You're like, well, I've done everything before, so I can do everything myself.
I think in the beginning, that's where, that was my safe place. I think, if I could, that was the one place where I could go out there and feel good about myself and get validation. And, whether it be through winning or playing well and so forth, that was the one little spot in my life where I felt I had some control over what was going on. But then once I found drugs and alcohol at 14, that just changed my whole existence. And it was like my life was in black and white and it just went to Technicolor. I mean, all of a sudden I was charming and tall and funny and, all the things I never felt. I was so hyper self-conscious, and all of a sudden the world just kind of changed for me that day. And I said, okay, no, this is something I'm going to play around with for a little while, because it was the first time I actually really felt good, comfortable in my skin. Lo and behold, it was, I was self-medicating a rather serious mental health disorder at the time. So I did not know at the time. So
was there a particular, you may have said this in the book, but was there a particular match that you can remember when you were like 16 or 17 years old where you were legitimately drunk and you still won and everybody was proud of you and you were like, I can do whatever I want. I'm the king of the world.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of that. I mean, I think you get away with it a few times, not drunk. I mean, that would be extreme, but I was high a lot in high school and playing a lot of kind of meaningless tennis, not the real tennis. The serious tennis. I did my best to stay sober at those events, but you get away with it a little bit. So that's how you rationalize. The whole game of addiction is just one constant rationalization. If my life was falling apart, then I would have to address my behavior, the consequences of the behaviors that I was engaging in. So the fact that I was still getting straight A's and still ranked pretty high and still being somewhat successful at that time, I had a pretty good defense against any argument that maybe I was harming myself.
How was your relationship with your family in between the years that you were not sober, you were playing tennis a little bit more to try and get back your old glory? What was your relationship like with your parents?
Yes, it was always complicated with them. Once one of the things when you're younger, you don't realize that your parents actually have lives and they have their own, marriage to deal with and their careers and other children and their own personal interests and stuff. So you think you're the center of their universe. And at some point in my parents, when we got out to California and their lives were very busy themselves and working full time, we weren't the full focus of their lives. So in many ways, what may have felt like neglect or abandonment in many ways, they were just, they just got kind of tired. They might have gotten a little tired of parenting us all the time. They raised 3 boys and you were kind of, typical fighting brothers all the time and stuff. And they just needed a little break. So but there wasn't a whole lot of communication there between us about what was going on and stuff. So the support was always hot and cold. My dad would be all in. And then, when it got a little too much for me, he would just withdraw and pull back and, and just leave me to myself to kind of do it myself. And so the in and out of the support and the in and out of the just kind of the emotional guidance really more than anything else. I never really had any guidance like, hey, listen, you got a chance to be really good at this.
Yeah.
Instead of putting,
did you have friends though who you were competing with at that particular time, whether it was like a year before UCLA were like, all right, this guy Barry Buss is going to be a problem. He's going to be a top 25 player. Did you have people feeding that information to you?
To a point, but we were all in the same boat. We were all just going at it. There was never anything. I wasn't any separate from anybody else. I mean, I was just one of the good guys in Southern California that would just go out every weekend and just do battle with everybody. So I wasn't any kind of prodigy above and beyond anybody else. I mean, these guys were spectacular in their own life. But at the same token, I was in the group of kids who all went on to have fantastic careers, and we all knew. We all knew we had game. We all knew we had potential. We were all going to, explore the college experience to our, and play it out, and then just see where the chips fall if we kept, developing, athletically and so forth. So,
who was the best guy you were training with at that particular time?
Oh, my average week, honestly, I would play with like Jorge Lozano from Mexico, who ended up winning the French Open. He would be, he played at my club. He came up to live at in our area. Kelly Jones, Jim Pugh, another former #1 in the world. Todd Witzkin moved out to California. He was another top 5 in the world player. On and on and on. I mean, it was just Eric Amond, John Letts, who won Kalamazoo. John Davis, it was spectacular levels of.
Yeah, you mentioned Kalamazoo. I want to talk about your experience at Kalamazoo. I unfortunately never had the opportunity to go there, and even still to this day, I'll watch zoo tennis clips on YouTube. So, what was your experience like at Kalamazoo? For those of you who don't know, it's the Mecca of tennis for 18 and unders. If you win the national championship in 18 and unders, you actually get a wild card into the U.S. Open.
So, it was such a mysterious place. It's kind of the place with the funny name. And my father and I used to go through all the USTA yearbooks when I was a little kid. We'd stay up late and go through all the results and go over the players and stuff. And we always would it would always end up at Kalamazoo. The whole big deal was to make it to Kalamazoo, so there was this one tough scene in the book with my father where we had parted ways when I was about 15 and stuff. I was a second year, 16, and he had kind of said, you got to do this on your own. And so I played that entire year on my own. I was hitchhiking to tournaments, had to get a job. It was just kind of crazy, but I qualified for Kalamazoo. I made it top 10 in Southern California, and I got my acceptance list, but I needed some help. I needed them to sign off, because I was still a minor and stuff. And I just remember sitting down asking my dad for permission, to go to Kalamazoo. This is like the thing. And he said no, because I didn't think I had done enough that year. And it was a tough situation for us because, I kind of, I thought I'd done enough. I was 15 years old doing this on my own and qualified for Kalamazoo, which was kind of like the whole thing. But then a couple years later, when I was on Junior Davis Cup team, we went there, and it was a real honor to be there. We were there with our USA jackets and, getting treated like rock stars. And, it's a special place. It was special then. It's still special now. They've managed to hold on to it, and I understand why,
What's your relationship been with people who you used to play tennis with?
Still really good. Yeah, really, really good. I mean, they're still some of my closest friends. I mean, Kelly Jones, I just saw Jim Pugh out in California. I just talked to Jonathan Cantor the other day. These guys I grew up with.
You felt like these guys were all a good influence on you? I mean, were there certain people that were a bad influence on you at that particular time?
Everyone was kind of doing our thing. It wasn't like, there were very few choir boys in my circle. So I just happened to be, I just happened to be a little bit over and above. I'm not going to mention any names or behaviors, but
well, bro, it was also different back then, man. Like, you didn't have cameras all up in your face.
No, we didn't.
Kind of do whatever you want as long as you can keep your eyes straight.
Exactly. And Lynn Bias was still alive, and so nobody was all worried about all that stuff. And so things did change during our time. So, but back in I joke around, talked to several guys who went to UCLA before me. It's like, God, I mean, it was such a great experience being here. But West LA in the late 70s and early 80s, I mean, you just had to be there. It was just a unique place to be. And
where was the Studio 54? You'd say in LA. What was that? What was the equivalent back?
There was a place called Voila. This is fantastic. So I'm like 18 years old. I'm running with the Saudi prince, and we're taking limos everywhere.
And quickly, how did you link with the Saudi prince?
So after my freshman year of playing, I was so burned out. I needed to catch up on a little bit of schooling, and all the guys on our team went to go play satellites and stuff. And it turned out there was a gentleman named Kelly Junkerman who was a coach like Kenny Rogers, kind of a coach to the stars, and he was coaching the Saudis at the time, but he got a bit piece in this movie, so he had to be away that summer. So the Saudis called the coach of UCLA. Bassett called me, asked me, "Hey, do you want to go? I got this lead for you." And I was going to go teach I was going to be teaching like public course at my old high school for like $6 an hour. I'd had a job. I was getting ready to go, metal nets and bunch of beginners. And next thing you know, I'm making $1,500 a week, in cash from the Saudis, and I'm getting all my buddies' jobs too. I mean, we had 3 or 4 of them going at a time, so it was pretty well. But anyway, so once I had those guys going, it was that lifestyle. So I'm 18, and I'm going to all the fanciest clubs in town, and sitting next to Raquel Welch, and just doing all kinds of fun things. So,
what was your relationship with Patrick McEnroe?
So Patrick and I, well, he's a couple years younger than I am, so we knew of each other growing up and stuff. And obviously, he went on to have his great career in tennis and in broadcasting. So it kind of goes back a little bit when he was head of American Player Development, and there was this kind of this Wayne Bryan email. I don't know if you caught wind of this thing. It was kind of the email that took over the tennis world. Where
is he? I haven't seen his presence in a while.
Yeah,
Mike and Bob Bryan.
Quiet. Yeah, he's calmed down a little bit. He's probably getting a little bit older too. But,
okay, and then and I think the boys stopped winning as many Grand Slams.
Yeah, they're on there.
I had my time, like LeVar.
They're in their post career here. So anyway, so Wayne puts this email out, and so I think I coined him the tennis tea party. It was back about 2010. He was just angry. It was pitchforks and riots and haystacks, and he was just so upset because American tennis had always had the next great player. We just had this constant succession from Connors to McEnroe to Agassi to Sampras, and we Curry. We'd always had that next guy. Then we had Roddick, and then obviously the Federer and those guys came around, and things fell off pretty quickly for us. And so we just didn't get that next champion. So in the meantime, we were investing all this money in player development, and Patrick was at the head of player development. So he started catching a lot of flack from the Wayne Bryan types in this email, and that we're just throwing all this money away and we're not doing it right. So I took a little umbrage to that. I said, because I get the passion. It was a lot of, yes, you're absolutely right. We have not developed the next champion. Now, is it Patrick's fault?
What year was that, by the way?
I'm going to go about 2010, 2011, something like that. Yeah. And so I'm completely on my own without even talking to Patrick. I just wrote a rather impassioned defense of not just Patrick, but American Player Development, and kind of told Wayne to calm down a little bit. And so it made some circulation, it got published out there and stuff. And Patrick caught wind of it. He just reached out to me. He said, "Hey man, really thank you for doing that. It was, you didn't, I just really appreciate you seeing this as it is and coming into my defense and stuff." And so we just developed a friendship back then, and just kind of we just kept in touch. We text all the time, and when it came time for me to write my book, I said, God, that'd be kind of cool if I could get him to do my forward. And soon I asked him, he just did it willingly, and it's been real good. Oh, man.
And you finished this book you finished this less than a year ago, right?
Yeah, so it came out. So the goal was, and it was about 2 years ago, I kind of really dug in, maybe 2.5 years ago. The goal was to finish it and have it published on my 10-year sobriety anniversary of March 10th of 2022. So I managed to literally get it delivered to my house on that day. So it took about 18 months to do. I could count on 2 hands how many days I took off. I would get up at 5:30 in the morning and just kind of go out to the living room table and get some coffee going and just start working on it. And it just kind of took on a life of its own, and it's kind of having a psychological +1 with you everywhere you're going. You're thinking about the book and and how it's going to turn out. But it's been such an honor to have it be so well received. And
it's great, man.
When you're putting yourself out there like that, it's a little nerve wracking. And
totally. I completely understand. Especially coming from a guy who I took tennis very seriously as a junior, went to college, I played for 2 years, and there was so much pressure all the time, and we weren't even at a level like UCLA. I just felt like, does this match really matter? It's taking so much from my college experience. Sleepless nights, nerves, and I understand, man, the amount of times I went out binge drinking after a match, smoking weed. It was just it's a lot of pressure. So we were talking about just to go back what you were saying about player development in America. You still very involved in the tennis world. Is there something that now it looks like we're pretty close to having a American champion. Hopefully within the next couple of years, we'll see a Grand Slam champion. Is there something specific that you think us Americans need to do on the tennis front to improve?
Well,
what was Wayne Bryan talking about to Patrick McEnroe?
Well, I think there was some misconceptions about what was going on down it wasn't even Orlando yet, but just at the main training centers, and the fact that they were doing a centralized organization where they're taking kids from all around the country and trying to bring them together and taking them from their primary coaches and yada yada yada, and everyone's making too much money and yada yada yada. So that, listen, at some fundamental level, tennis is played on the court. There's no secret sauce to this stuff. Whether you're in Mallorca in Spain or Switzerland and Federer, or wherever you're doing your thing, it's on a court with a coach and a bunch of talented guys, a bunch of driven guys. And listen, genetics plays an enormous part in this. You've got to be, if you look at the top three guys, there's the three I just mentioned there. I mean, they're just different. They're physically different than the American players that have come on in the last few generations. So I don't think there's anything we're doing wrong or anything doing differently culturally. I mean, are we more comfortable than other countries? Are we not as hungry? I can't really say that, because our women have been fantastic. We've had Serena and Venus and Henin, and we got right down the line. We've got a bunch of Grand Slam champions on the women's side, Sloane Stephens. So it's not just because we haven't had the guy.
Yeah, and it also feels like Federer was the guy, and
they're just
Nadal was the guy. Like, so there's a period of time where it's just those guys.
There's no, and then throw Djokovic. I mean, listen, if Djokovic was from Chicago or Federer was from LA or Nadal was from Miami, you think tennis would be more popular in America than ever. They just happen to be born somewhere else.
And Are you playing pickleball these days or what?
We have pickleball here. It's right down there. Yeah, I'm on the.
I haven't played yet, but I watched on YouTube the other day. What was it? Andy Roddick, Agassi, Michael Chang, and John McEnroe. Yeah. And I watched it for like 15 minutes. I was impressed with myself.
That's 50 more than I could. Yeah. No, that's not
moving quick.
I haven't drank the Kool-Aid yet. I get it. It's super fun. And
but I don't want it to take away from tennis, man.
No. As long as I can continue to play tennis, we're going to keep doing that. But back to what you were saying a second ago about the stress level, and this is kind of where my next project is. One thing I get asked a lot about my book is, what could have been done to help me when I was younger? Were there things, could people or situations been in place to help me out? And and when I answer that question is, what happened to me was 40 years ago, and nobody knew a lot of anything. My parents, my teachers, my coaches, certainly myself, about addiction or mental health or mood disorders or any of that stuff. But what I'm hoping for is today, we're 40 years past that, and what's in place now? Do we know more? Because if you think about mental health nowadays, it's never been in the news more, right? Where there's an awareness. You can't open the news without seeing some kind of headline of some kind
therapy is in,
no, it's everywhere. So we've never known more. We've never been more aware. We've never done more. Yet the numbers are terrible. We're falling terribly behind right now, and every statistic is alarming. There's a teenage mental health crisis, announced by the Surgeon General. So what are we doing wrong? We're missing something here. Now there's some factors, obviously COVID, social media. I mean, there's obvious things that I think the kids are struggling with, but right now teenage levels of anxiety, depression, and those things are off the charts. So what I'm really trying to launch into now is my next project is called First Ball to Last, where I'm really trying to isolate the causal effects of this. So kind of what you said with stress. I mean, just life in general is stressful right now, but then you add tennis to that on top of that. And that's a difficult mix. So what we're really trying to figure out is, can we set up a program of prevention? Really, genetics, we can't control that, and there's certain things out of our life, but environment plays a huge role in how we develop. Whether we have support, whether we're in a stressful environment, whether we're in a violent, growing up in an environment with domestic violence or substance abuse, those are very obvious problems. But what can we control? Can we control the environment enough and our reaction to that environment? And I really think that's really where that's going to be kind of the missing link, I think, going forward here for teenagers and young adults.
Controlling the environment.
Yeah, as best you can, or in response to the environment. Tennis is always going to be a little stressful, but my perspective, the way we respond to these situations. I mean, if you think of our emotional response system, it's so antiquated. Right? This thing was locked into place tens of thousands of years ago when we were not a complex society like we are. Evolution just can't keep up. So the fear that we feel in a close tennis match is not really commensurate to the fear that you may have felt when a tiger's coming for you or you're about to be attacked.
It depends how many match points you're down. Right?
And somehow we survive these matches. So the anxiety and the stress that we're constantly under to perform and to get ahead, I think there's a way to mitigate that through perspective and mindfulness and just really working right from the first ball to the last ball and keeping kids. I use the analogy, we brush our teeth every day, not because we're trying to get our teeth healthier. We're just trying to protect them from the weird things that can happen. What about if we did that every day with our mindfulness and our meditation and our mental health?
How do you suggest doing that?
That's my next program. It's coming out right now.
And it's a Kickstarter,
It's a
right?
Kickstarter. Yeah, we just got this thing going. It's very ambitious. I hope I'm not biting off too much. It's going to be, but I think I'm going to write another book about this. I got a series of essays I'll be putting out this year. I'm going to have a website with a bunch of produced videos. I'd love to talk to you and get some your acting skills in there. I would need some, when the skeleton key is how do we get this complex research oriented stuff to children, to kids, so they can grab it, and I think the more we can kind of humanize this stuff and not make it like some research abstract from a university where very few people can understand that stuff. So trying to bring it down to the level so they understand, core levels of what they're, identifying your emotions and being able to walk them back and understand how you're feeling. Because if you're just constantly being assaulted by negative emotions and they just metastasize to your system, you're going to struggle. There's just no, by the time you realize you have a problem, it's too late. That stuff's really affecting your life and stuff. So I think a real strong emphasis on prevention and awareness in this space could really go a long way. And they're doing this in schools now, in younger age. Yeah.
Is there something that you would tell your 17 or 18-year-old self if you can go back right now? What would you say?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, that's really been the driving force behind this. I mean, as I put this whole thing together, there's so many times I'll just stop like, God, if I had something like this available to me when I was younger, I just, there's just no way. Not only would not a lot of the difficult things have happened to me in my life and my family and so forth, but just, I would have been able to see my talents through, I mean, not that I was going to, I wasn't going to be playing the second week of any majors or anything like that, but a lot of meaningful tennis didn't get played, and to invest so much of your life in something and just not get the proper return on it and end up, kind of empty and devastated at the end of it. That's just, it doesn't have to be that way. So yeah, there's a lot of things. I'd love to talk to my 14-year-old self too.
How has family life helped you in the whole journey? Writing the book, staying sober.
Yeah, gosh,
spreading the good message.
I came here to Nashville to start to kind of settle down a little bit. I was going bi-coastal. I was in LA and New York, is kind of doing summer jobs and teaching and back and forth. And then came out here to start an academy with another gentleman here. And then met a gal here who needed a guy, and
Southern Belle. Is that what
well, she's from Iowa, but she landed in Nashville.
Midwestern Belle, bro. Midwestern Belle.
There you go, Midwestern Belle, exactly. She got 4 beautiful children, all grown. We got 2 pugs and a grandbaby. They're all coming into town tonight, and it's been a real, it gets me out of myself. I'm responsible to others, and it's just kind of filled something that was missing in my life for a long time. So
new journey every day. Is that kind of what you feel? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. It's good. So we got a good groove going here, and it's very healthy, and it just couldn't be happier.
This is great. Barry, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. For those of you who didn't get the intro, Barry and I met on a podcast probably like a month ago through one of my old tennis coaches, and I found his story to be super inspiring. You guys can get the book on Amazon. It's like $25. Great read. I actually probably need to finish this book, but I was bouncing around reading chapters, man. Barry, where can we find you online? Where's the Kickstarter? Just kind of plug yourself, man.
Yeah, so Barry Buss, come to Facebook, come to Instagram. Those are the 2 places I hang out the most. I'm very active there. I think my accounts are open, so you don't need to jump in. And yeah, we're going to be real active with this going forward. I got a lot of exciting stuff coming up here. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but it's a lot of things in the works, and I'm going to definitely want to talk to you when we're done here, and maybe employ your acting skills. And
would love to, bro. Any character you need, man. I'm your guy. I'm your guy. Barry, this is really a great time, man. Have an amazing weekend with the family, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, man.